Yeah, what's going on?
Hey, welcome back. Tech issues aside, we have returned. We are waiting on our guests to get logged back in here. But go check out. I did not mention this before we broke for tech issues, but in the show notes below, that if you guys are interested in supporting and checking out more on Bend the Knee, all of their links are currently in the descriptions below, and you guys can also pre-save Betrayed for its release tomorrow. Speaking of which, Rob is here. Hello.
Howdy.
Sorry.
Hi. That's okay. I used to do a radio show back on Long Island for like 10 years. And when you do stuff live, it's unpredictable, man. I'm sympathetic.
I want to also just real quick before we I guess it would be the perfect segue from kind of moving into, the subject of music into Dog Soldiers, and particularly one of the things that I think would not have happened. Heavy Horror Hope Fest. For those of you guys that don't know, Victims and Villains, we did our first ever New York Film and Music Fest this year, back in October, a few weeks ago. That does not happen without Rob. Rob hooked us up with Cross Island Connect up there, his boy Sammy.
Shout out Sammy Lehman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see forever, baby.
And, that happens because of things like community. That happens because of things like people hearing needs and understanding that there is purpose and value in one another and helping one another out. So I am very grateful for you and for making that happen, bud. My guy.
Dude, I was happy to do that. You're my homie, and Sammy's one of my oldest friends on planet Earth. And when you came to me with that idea, I was like, yo, I know just the guy. He's big into metal and he is big into horror movies. And I was like, there's no better combination here. So, gotta link you up with Sammy.
Well, so this while we are on the topic of community, we have advocated over the eons that community, having a steady community, is so incredibly valuable for your mental health. Oscar's joined us. And one of the things that I think is really important to consider about not only the film that we're getting ready to talk about with Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers, but also the importance of what today is. Today is Veterans Day, and veterans have such a high suicide rate, and we always talk about anytime the subject of mental health or suicide prevention gets brought up, veterans are always very quick to get brought up as well. 72% of veterans are actually higher at risk of suicide than those who haven't served, according to StopSoldierSuicide.org. Just put this into perspective, in 2021, it was reported that 6,392 veterans died by suicide, and there are more than 20 consecutive years with 6,000 plus veterans dying by suicide. That even one veteran dying by suicide seems too much. And so today we honor those that have gone and done what most of us are too scared shitless to do, putting it honestly. So we're honoring men like Rick, and we're honoring men like Oscar that have given up their time and their resources to serve our country. And we're talking about a movie that hones down on the importance of sticking it out together, and hopefully you guys didn't fight werewolves in your time.
No.
I low-key had my fingers crossed. I was like, come on, break out the crazy stories.
That guy can't talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was in Fort Benning, Georgia, so Columbus, I mean, you can find anything in Columbus.
We're talking about the movie Dog Soldiers tonight, and before we go anywhere right now, just starting a conversation around the idea of veterans and suicide prevention. You guys can go to victimsandvillains.net or click the links in the show notes below. Go to click /dot .net/hope. Check out our mental health resource library where you can just dial 988 hit 1 and it'll take you right to the Veterans Suicide Crisis Line. But gentlemen, we're here to talk about the movie that Rob's picked that I promised Rick 4 years ago we would do eventually.
4.
Awesome. Making it happen.
It's good things happen to those who wait.
Absolutely.
I had never seen this movie, so this is the first time for me. How many of you guys have seen it? How many of you guys hadn't?
First time
saw it.
Too.
I saw it a long time ago.
Okay.
I think I saw parts of it before because I recognized parts of it. The other parts I didn't. You know, like you're changing the channel and you're like, oh, that looks interesting.
All right. So gentlemen, I got to give it. We'll go with guests first. Like, what are your general thoughts on this movie? What's your relationship with this movie? Rick, I know yours, but we let the bend the knee guys talk a lot during the beginning of the show. So give it to you first.
And I'll keep it short and simple. I saw it, and from what other people were like, after like I looked it up, where people saying that like this is one of like the best werewolf movies like made, and I was like, so I was watching, I was like, dude, this is actually pretty dope. Like I haven't seen.
Yeah.
It took me by surprise at first. I was like, dog soldiers, like what is this about? And then like all the whole military stuff. I was like, all right, cool. Is this like a typical military soldier thing? And then the werewolves started coming out. I was like, dude, this is sick. I like it.
Yeah. The first time I seen it, I think it was in 2003. I was living in Martinsburg, actually in Hedgesville, and I had an English roommate, and we used to hang siding together. And he was the first one to turn on. He's like, "Oh, mate, you got to watch this movie." And I was like, "What is it?" You know, I was 23. It was like, "Oh my God, it's so amazing." And then fast forward maybe 10 years, or it was something like that. I was married, and as you guys may or may not know, people with anxiety and depression, PTSD and stuff, like we will watch things over and over again because it's kind of like a comfort thing, you know. So the 3-4 years before her and I actually got divorced, I watched it every single night for 3 years plus. So I've seen it at least 1,500 times, and that is a legitimate conservative estimate. So I put it on, I go to sleep, I dream, I'm in the movie. So it's very comforting to me. But you're right. It is the best werewolf movie, I think, that I've ever seen personally.
Yeah.
The way it looks, the creature looks, and how they react to it. It's not like overly dramatic or anything like that, you know, like fakish. It seems like it could legitimately have happened somewhere in the Highlands of Scotland, which I believe totally.
The creature was by far one of my favorites, honestly. Like, looks
yeah. And I think the guy who did the I forgot his name. The main guy, the guy who's in the beginning, the one who pulls everybody together and survives at the end. He actually did a voiceover for a Call of Duty game. He was in Train Spotting. Sam Pertwee is in it. So that is pretty amazing stuff, which I thought was great. You just can't beat it.
nice.
I thought it was a ton of fun too, man. That's it's been on my list for a long time. People have been like, "Oh, you got to see Dog Soldiers," but it was kind of hard to find. Like, I feel like it hadn't been streaming in a while. And, Josh approached me, I guess, about a month ago talking about doing this podcast. And I named off a couple of my favorite horror movies. And he's like, "Oh, I did them. I did that one. I was like, well, I got this movie that just popped up on one of my streaming services. I was like, why don't we watch this? Like, I wanted to watch this movie for probably 10 plus years and have just never gotten to it. So I think what they did for $2 million in that movie was pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was definitely low budget, but it got the point across. You know, it's like definitely kind of in that vein of sort of action horror that you saw a lot in the early 2000s, with the military and lots of guns and shooting. I think the end twist was crazy. I really enjoyed it, man. I actually watched it about a couple hours before I came into this, so it was still fresh in my mind, and I was able to talk about it.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought it was a great thing. I thought Neil Marshall nailed it. I feel like some of his other movies, like The Descent, was awesome. That's another one of my favorite horror movies. I didn't realize he did that until today, which was kind of cool. But yeah, it was a really solid movie, man. Very, very solid. It was worth the wait for sure.
Yeah.
You hated it.
No, I didn't say that. I was gonna reply to Rob's first thing. Look, we've covered a lot of movies in over 130 episodes, so
And
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
feel bad. He does it to me. I'll name a movie. They're like, both of them
Yeah,
are
he's-
like, we've already covered it. I'm like, oh, great. I got to find something else.
he's the new guy. He's only been here a few
Long
months.
time.
He's
I'm
still
the trainee.
probation.
So
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, you have done more events with victims than Mark. So
I'm not good at events. You know this.
I can attest to it. I established this on our Brotherhood of the Wolf episode that I am not the hugest fan of werewolf movies. I don't know what it is specifically about wolf movies that like just doesn't click or resonate with me, or that I find like somewhat boring. This one was better. I will say that it's not. I won't throw it that it's the best one that I've seen yet that I've come across, because Lon Chaney set that bar pretty high.
Oh yeah,
so-
yeah, no, that's yeah, agreed,
A lot
agreed.
a lot of your werewolf movies
I like
tend
this
to
one.
deal. A lot of the werewolf movies tend to deal a lot with the backstory of the person that's the werewolf, or the situation that they're in, instead of where this just kind of goes right into it.
Yeah.
They're dropped off. They wander around to where those special forces guys were when they hear some noises and find blood and guts everywhere, and that's that. It starts off. The shit show starts. So it's that's one of the big differences between it and other werewolf movies.
I
This
agree.
one-
There wasn't a whole lot of messing around.
Yeah, this,
They got going right away.
this
They
one
Yeah.
just
does
got to the point.
this one does tension really well with that, to where it really allows like all of these characters to kind of it kind of almost, I guess, like the best way I could articulate what I'm trying to say is that it feels kind of almost like not as masterful as the Thing, but it kind of becomes the Thing kind of by the third act, where you're not sure who actually could be the werewolf once the kind of the quote big twist happens.
Yeah. And I think it's so typical to like the actual military. You got super sneaky, super soldiers like Captain Ryan was at the beginning. I got approached in high school by the 19th Special Forces Group. I actually got recruited right out of high school, so I was kind of right into that. Quit school and went into the special operations, which was insane. I mean, I hurt my knee and all that, but that's the difference in mentality. You got these guys who are just knee knocking around, or it's a training exercise. You know, one dude would rather be watching football, you know, and he's just pissed off that he can't. And then you come across these slick little DARPA-like guys who have all the answers, and then everything just goes to crap, and the team they don't know what to do. They're just there for themselves. They want to get home. They're trying to figure it out. And that's pretty typical, I think, the reality, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking like, man, you're in a training exercise. Just not. The thing is like, whatever. It's just a regular routine. Everything you have to do once a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
And I like it because they had the actual like the yellow tips on their guns too. I was like, yeah. Exactly what I would have been done.
The old Miles gear. Yeah.
Hits the pen. You're like, I don't have real ammunition for this, man. Like, what the?
see,
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I like that.
what is it? Sean Pertwee, or however you say his name.
Yeah.
I remember him as Alfred in Gotham. So I'm sitting there thinking,
Yeah.
Alfred's gonna kick the werewolf ass. So yeah.
Which one was he? Which one was he?
He was
Sergeant Wells.
Yeah, Sergeant Wells.
Sergeant Wells.
Oh, the dude that was in Event Horizon.
Yeah. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
Also a movie we've covered. Go check it out.
Also, shout outs to Liam Cunningham. I feel like that dude is low key in everything. He's got that voice. He was like the special ops guy that was like
He was
behind
Ryan.
everything. Huh?
He was Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. Like he just that dude, he is in everything, and he's got that stern, serious voice and everything he does. It's kind of like I saw him, I didn't recognize him at first, then he opened his mouth. I was like, oh, it's that guy. It's Game of Thrones guy. Yeah, what's up, man?
Yeah, it's I like. We've established we're fans of traditional effects over CGI, and they kind of did it right in this one. There's very little CGI in this movie at all. Just like a couple quick little things like eyes changing and stuff like that. Nothing major. So That's
feel
part of
like
what
if you have
makes
too
it
much
cool.
CGI kind of kills the vibe of the movie, especially in horror films. Like if you have too much CGI, you kind of lose interest. And you're like, whatever. But if it's more very minimalistic and more, what they call it, like
There's practical effects.
Practical effects,
Yeah,
yeah.
it gets you more engaged. I like those type of movies a lot better.
it makes it feel more believable to have
Yeah.
traditional effects, practical effects over CGI.
100%.
And I always like the style where they do the standoffish. They don't show you right away the werewolf or anything until later on, so that it builds off like just arms and legs or whatever, versus just showing it being 8 foot tall. That usually works better for me too.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason I think this one works as well as it does in terms of, modern day werewolf pictures, is because it you have to earn it as the audience. Whereas I feel like a lot of modern horror is like, we're just gonna give you the monster, like
It's like,
That's one of the things we talked about when we talked about the Terrifier double feature in October. Was when you look at Terrifier 1 compared to Terrifier 2, man, they just give it right to you. It's opening shot right out of the gate. Same for Terrifier 3, but with Terrifier you really had to earn it, and that's how it felt with this one. Is like it had a really good use of shadows, and really built up with its suspense and how it would move the camera and just fluidity. So that's what I think you need more of when you're telling stories like this. And maybe I'm the odd one out here, but I think for me, I really want to be able to connect to the monsters. I think that's what really allows me to leech and want to come back to visit movies like this.
yeah. I mean, like they used the black and white versus using like this green for night vision and everything for them to use. I actually enjoyed that better than them using the green that they do now to give it more of the, I guess, old school style versus the new school.
You're talking about the vision of the werewolves?
Mm-hmm.
So they were going by the theory that dogs see in black and white.
Right.
That's what that's about.
Gotcha.
I mean, granted, that's been disproven since then,
But still, that's kind of a neat touch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's you can tell they were really thoughtful about how they were going to present the werewolves. Like the whole gimmick where they've been living in the woods for centuries in the one house it was awesome, man. Like I feel like they were thoughtful with their monster design, right? Especially with these old school monsters that have been done a million times, like werewolves, vampires. I feel like it's kind of rare to see a unique take on it, and I feel like this movie kind of did that in a way. Because again, it was right off the bat, no messing around. There wasn't any, no nonsense, man.
Yeah, it's good.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah,
I forgot already.
That happens quite a lot. But I going off of what that the character design for this, I think when you think of at least more fictionalized versions, I guess, of like army men, you think of buff guys, you think of taller, traditional, like just I guess like tall, just jack dudes. So I'm trying to say, for some reason I'm getting the guy from like Fairly Odd Parents like picture in my head.
See that
Arnold, right? Everybody looks like Arnold.
But
everyone looks like Arnold. Like, but the reason I bring that up is because like you have this like you have this more taller, more muscular version of your average average Joe, and so I think that kind of also really plays really well into the idea of these guys being werewolves, but also being soldiers, and kind of taking those amalgamations and creating something new and refreshing.
Yeah,
sure. I think they did a lot of good work on like the actual characters too. You felt for the soldiers like they weren't just cannon fodder for the most part. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of newer horror movies, people are just there to die. right?
Yeah.
And you know, like they don't really do any kind of character development in a lot of the people that are just kind of victims, you know. And I feel like in this, the soldiers all had personalities. They were all kind of unique individuals. So like when they got taken out one by one, you always kind of like, oh no, not that guy. I kind of was hoping he was going to make it. I feel like you don't see that so much in a lot of newer horror movies. I mean, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but
Friday the 13th.
There's a lot of movies you don't connect with the characters. Maybe the main and the one that's with the main, but the rest of them are just like, okay, whatever.
It kind of seems like a lot of modern horror is either about the jump scares or trying to be the next Hereditary or Midsummer.
That's valid.
Especially American horror.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You okay?
I mean, I've got some talking points here, as we've established here on Abyss Gazing. I am the note taker, so I am curious before I jump into some of the things that I was interested in talking about. If you guys had anything that warrants conversation or any like conspiracy theories you had
about the movie
or film trivia.
I'm not saying we could go in like if it's like that.
I did find out there's alternate cuts, and the main one that I saw mentioned was they actually show Spoon getting killed, and apparently it's fairly violent and grisly.
Oh man,
I think that's on Prime.
Huh?
I think that's the one I watched that was on Prime.
Okay, because I watched it on Peacock, and
Yeah, I watched it on Prime.
You see Spoon getting ready to be killed, and then they cut away to other stuff. But one of the other cuts that they did was Spoon gets killed, and you actually see it, and apparently it's pretty violent.
Yeah.
Oh, you just ruined my life.
Hey,
just ruined my life.
but the watch was safe. We're good.
Yeah. Star's gonna get his watch back. Yeah, because I like Spoon the most. I mean, I like all the characters and what they do. Even Terry, you know, the vomiting cavalier. I like them all, but Spoon, he's so gung ho and like means it when he's talking about Rock's Drift, and he's like, "You're fucking loving this, aren't you?" You know, like, yeah. When he bashes that one's hand with the pot, that's. But it's like true, you know, just complete. I'll have a go, you know, like I'm just one of us is not walking away from this. Let us try to be, you know, me. I want to walk away from this, and he's so hardcore about it. I really like it. But like you were saying, all the parts, I believe, for me at least, seeing it the first time I seen it, I didn't know who any of the actors were, and it's hard to say. Like you got a couple A-listers, and you know, normally, you know, they're pretty much going to survive. So like wearing a red shirt in Star Trek, you know. It's just the way that is, but you just don't really understand or who's going to go first. So I got emotionally invested in it, you know, every time I watched it, you know, for a while, and I still do, you know, even though I've seen it so many times. They did such a wonderful job with it, with the characters, and the scene where Spoon is talking to Cooper about whether or not they think the Sarge is going to change. You know, he's like, you know, until then, he's one of us. You know, it's the Sarge, and I like how that shows, like, to me, the bond that they had, the family dynamic that is in those kind of situations in the military, especially where like anything in like fire department or any high trauma bonds, basically, is what they are.
Sure.
And I really enjoyed that. It was so close to home for me just to be familiar with that dynamic, and I think it's fantastic. You know, I got to try to find this new edit that you're talking about. That made me sad.
And Spoon did go out like a boss. I feel like his last line was so good. I hope I give you indigestion. It's like, yeah.
I hope I give you the shits, and then spits his gum in his mouth. Yeah.
I'm saying, he went out like a G. You know, it's like if you're gonna get eaten by a werewolf, at least you should have a quippy one-liner to fucking wrap it up. You know.
Yeah.
Beating them with cast iron pans and stuff.
Yeah. And when he digs out that claymore, and then Cooper's like, "You're gonna poke somebody's fucking eye out with that thing, man." You know, it's like Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I think I could identify more with Cooper. You know, I don't know, Josh. Pretty young last time I actually seen him on a regular basis, but anybody who's watched it with me has been like, just look at me like, Burkey, dude, you're Cooper. I'm like, no, I know, no, I don't. Must be the Burkey in me. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know, man.
No, I respect Cooper though. Cooper's the one that wouldn't kill the dog at all, at the
Yeah.
beginning or the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
The dog was with him when he left.
Yeah.
I mean, when they kill the dog, it's time to kill all of them at that point.
Yeah, pretty much.
Go
When I was
John
going to
Wick on the
Ryan-
ass.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm mad we said that in sync.
Well, Rick, you brought up something that I'm kind of curious and kind of pivoting into more of the observance of what today means, and how often do you guys, for you and Oscar, like how often do you guys find in your times of serving that you guys, how quickly does the reality of trauma bonding actually happen? I feel like for civilians, speaking from an outside perspective, it feels like it's a elongated experience that takes several months to several years with an individual. But I'm kind of curious, what does that look like for you guys in the intensity of war and action?
I guess you don't really realize till after the fact. You know what I mean? Like, I've been through way more traumatic things. Like I said, I got out before 9/11. There was a 2-year stint where I disappeared. No contact with my parents or my family, my friends. I just went off the map doing some extracurricular activities. I didn't even know the word trauma bonding and what it meant until I started going to therapy once a week for the last year and a half or so, which has helped tremendously, by the way. I didn't understand what a trauma bond was. I figured, but I couldn't get my head around it. If you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? And I think I've got a lot of veteran friends, and some of them have taken their own lives. They've lost that battle, unfortunately. I too have battled with that myself, many times. You were talking about Stop Soldier Suicide. I actually have done 4 fundraisers for them. The last one I did was not this past August, but the one before. I ran 63 miles, and the money that was raised, Stop Soldier Suicide messaged me and told me that the money I raised for that went to help a guy complete his treatment and get back out into the world, so to speak, and completed his treatment.
Hell yeah.
Suicide, and speaking from like a first responder or military perspective, in my opinion, is a lot of people who haven't got the experience with suicide or anything like that think it's just taking the easy way out. And I found personally that's not the case at all. A lot of the times, again, this is my own perspective, you feel like you're doing somebody a favor. You know what I mean? Like, how could I possibly function in a world and not be a burden on somebody? You know what I mean? And having people worry about me and put their time and effort and love and tenderness into me, knowing or feeling at the time that it's never going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And in that respect, they're kind of like performing like seppuku, like Harry, like this is an honorable way for me to go in order to team first, to take care of the team first. I am no longer say that we're combat effective, or I can't be. I'm holding up the operation by breathing, and they feel sometimes that they're making the ultimate sacrifice for their family or their friends or even themselves. I'm not saying that all of them are like that. Sometimes they just have enough, and it's really sad. So I think when you're in such a high speed environment with such high speed individuals who don't care about the bullets flying over your head. It's not about politics. It's about, at that point, the man on the ground, the low end of the pyramid is just getting your buddy home, knowing that I will give my life to save them, which coincidentally is why I went into the military. Even at 18 years old, I was struggling with suicidal thoughts. And my exact words when my recruiter asked my parents, who was a Green Beret, he's like, Rick, tell your parents why you want to join. I was like, my life is shit. And if I can give my life to save somebody else, that will make it worth it. Like, that will clean the slate. You know what I mean? Of course, my mom cried, went to the bedroom, and my dad's a very stoic man. And he said, A man's got the right to die however he wants. And that really stuck with me even over the years. And coincidentally, it was those words that has kept me alive. I'm doing fantastic right now, mind you. Sorry to monopolize this conversation, but that's just my opinion on it. That's what's gotten me through, and those are the things that I've seen through my friends and people that I've come across over the years. It's like a thief in the night, man, that mentality. And same thing with addiction and alcoholism. The opposite of addiction is connection. And when you feel like you're losing a connection, or you have no connections with anybody, it's the blind leading the blind at that point. It's a very precarious situation. It's very dangerous. We were losing 22 veterans a day. Now, at least I'm not sure the numbers in the last couple of years, but it was pushing closer to 40. That's a terrible thing. That's a terrible thing. But it happens even with civilians and people. Like, it happens. People just give up. They just can't deal with life anymore. Life is tough. And if you're not squared away or have a good support system, it's a very dangerous situation. Very dangerous. And once you do it, once you take a life, you can't give it back, even if it's your own. And that's a sad situation, unfortunately. But I think awareness is being more drawn into this right now, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. America is really loving our war fighters. And I see so many people go out of their way to thank people for their service and really appreciate and be there for them. There's a lot of programs, Wounded Warrior Project, Stop Soldier Suicide, Project 22, I think, is another one. These are all incredible things. But it's the stigma of a man not being able to talk about his problems is huge. And I think there's getting a little leeway. People are being more enlightened and their eyes are open to the fact that men need to talk about their problems. It's not a sign of weakness. I was very fortunate with my dad, who was very hard-nosed when I was growing up, to say the least. He told me one day, he's like, son, he said, crying doesn't make you weak. If God didn't want you to cry, he wouldn't have given you the ability to cry. So I was very blessed with having that as a father, with that mentality. Because I was in a sober living, and they're like, oh, my dad said you're weak if you cry. And that happens a lot. And that really does happen a lot. And that's not the case, It's just not the case. So that's my thoughts on that. I may have rambled a little bit too much, but I'm very passionate about the subject. I'm very, very passionate about it.
It comes through, and it's good that you're speaking on it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So building off that, the family can see it, and the family's affected also.
Yeah.
And it's not
Definitely
just mental, though. Like, for instance, my dad's got Agent Orange from.
Oh yeah.
My dad's military, so he's disabled vet now, and it hits him hard. And he has times where he has, like today, we went to lunch with him, and he got dizzy and almost fell. And then he went with my mom to one of the bases around here where none of us were there with him, and he did fall. So, and it's stuff medical wise that he's dealing with. But there are times when I was younger that a lot of that hit him hard, and he did have to go to the hospital for mental. And the older generation didn't want to talk about that, especially guys. It's you're weak. You're not supposed to do this. It's more like you said. It's enlightened as we've gotten along in the years, and the younger generation trying to help. That has opened that up for people to open up to people and get more support and help to take some of that stress off of them.
Yeah.
So I'll start from the first part that you said, the bonding, and then.
Do you guys? So the question ended up was: do you find it as someone that has served and has been in more intense environments? Do you find that the idea of trauma bonding happens quicker in the line of duty, or like we said for civilians, like it feels like it's a more elongated process?
Yeah, I mean, you're living with these guys like every day. You're pretty much your roommates, battle buddies. Sometimes you even go to basic training with them. So you kind of develop that bond right away. Just when you go through trauma, it just takes it to the next level, right? You will do more things for them than sometimes you would do for your family, if that makes sense. Because you can end up caring so much for these people. Um, yeah, man. Rick had it pretty hard. Like I struggle through that stuff. And then not too long ago, I lost a buddy of mine. Unfortunately, it wasn't by suicide, and it wasn't combat related. He was just he got hit by somebody driving under the influence, and he was on his way home from lunch. He was a recruiter, and he passed away. And going through to the funeral, I met some of his battle buddies that he was in a different unit with, and we just kind of bonded right away. We just clicked. We were same MOS, going through the same thing, and we just like became friends right off the bat. The thing in the military world is it's way different. It's like a fraternity, but we just get to do cooler shit. I think it's a different experience. It's hard to explain at times. Some people don't get it, but like the bond is just there from the bat. Like I don't think the trauma just makes it differently. Like just kind of gets you more connected with each other, and you always want to check in on one another. And even like now, like I think that the band knows like we have it's a different friendship that we have and connection. But there's things I cannot share with them, or I cannot connect with them in a different level that I would with somebody in like the military. So it's just some things I don't say, some things I don't talk about, and some things they wouldn't get. They cannot relate with me. And like you said, like Rick said, like sometimes you feel like a burden for people, so you don't want to talk to them. And that's how sometimes I feel like I can't talk to these people about this stuff. So you look for somebody who was in the military, so you can relate to, and you can share stuff right off the bat because it's different. Like, yeah. Hopefully that explains it a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there was a scene in the movie, if I remember correctly, when they were like all kind of talking about what the biggest fears were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why a little bit of an example kind of like shows you like those conversations that you have in the military. I never had that conversation about like what's your biggest fear, but we have random conversations that you wouldn't share. You wouldn't talk to anybody else, but that's how you make those connections. And yeah, like you're doing training, you're so bored. So you start talking about random stuff and then just trying to get your mind out of the thing that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool that I was like, I can relate. I can relate.
It's like the smoke pit in it. It's like the smoke pit.
Actually, there's a thing is like every training event is like we had a timer. How long was it going to take for somebody to start kicking rocks? Literally, because then you're like, you're just out there, and then you see somebody kicking a rock. It's like, there you go, starts. or if you don't. I think that happened to me. I went to Poland, and I got attached to the Royal Army, the British Army, and we were like, I didn't smoke, but they're heavy smokers in Europe, and then we were so bored. There was nothing to do, and like every training you get, you just want to get out. Like you don't want to do something, they'll make you do something dumb. So I picked up rolling cigarettes and started smoking through that rotation. Because that was the thing to do. So every time you just go out through a smoke pen, you start talking to them and then bonded differently. So yeah, and we have a lot of things in common. Like the British Army and us, we have a lot of things in common. Yeah. Smoke pit conversations are awesome.
I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of also curious, to kind of bring all of us back into this conversation too. Billy brought up something in between Rick and Oscar that I think is also very vital is, how has the conversation of like men and mental health, like the relationship of that too, like affected the way that we all take our mental health seriously now, or maybe we don't?
I think honestly, like the younger generation, well, Ricky, I think you can assure me for this, but like the new incoming soldiers has been more of a like it's okay to do it. right? It's normal. Like it's okay for them to speak up and like express what they're dealing with. Because for the longest time, like even not only in the military but outside, it looks like a weakness. Like you're just weak. Your man, you're supposed to be tough. Yeah, you're supposed to like suck it up and move on. And it's very ingrained to me to this point. Like not I don't do it to others. I make sure they express themselves and they talk. But personally, that's how I grew up. That's how it's always been. Men don't cry, and you don't share your feelings, and you bottle everything up. And the same in the military. That's the thing that you did. If you went to talk to behavioral health or you went to sick call, you were like, oh, you're just faking it. You're just weak, right? Like so, a lot of soldiers did not go to sick call, did not go to behavioral health, and that stuff comes back at the end, unfortunately, with injuries or depression, and taking their own lives because it was ingrained in their system. They don't want to speak about it. But I think the younger generation nowadays are doing such a better job of being open about it and being welcoming about it and say, you know what, this is a problem, let's fix it. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of validity to that. Last stat I read was it's something like 3 or 4 to 1 for male suicide to female suicide. And I think it does go back to what y'all are saying, where as a man, it is ingrained. I mean, I'm 38, so I'm definitely part of that older generation where it was, and not like older generation, but old enough to where it's, you were kind of raised like, oh, don't talk about it, just deal with it, right? And I do feel like that stigma is slowly leaving. I feel like people are more comfortable talking about the baggage that they have, because I think everybody's got baggage,
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody needs someone that they could talk to about that sort of stuff, because it just weighs you down otherwise. Going back to like the music community, I feel like that's one of the best things. Is being available to people who need to talk about that sort of stuff, because I think it does. Even to this day, it still doesn't get talked about enough, especially when it comes to guys. Like they just have that mindset where they have to keep quiet and they have to just kind of shove it down and be a provider and be strong about it, and that they think that having a moment like that is a sign of weakness. And I don't think that's really the case anymore. I feel like people should be able to talk about what's weighing them down, because otherwise it's going to weigh you down forever. How are you going to get past that?
Yeah. I think sometimes the emotions, they're not even sure what they are, what's causing them to feel that way or acting in that kind of a way. Things will manifest in such insane kind of ways. Like many times when I was still having anxiety attacks extremely bad, I didn't realize all the physical symptoms, for instance, that come along with just anxiety. Like I have an anxiety attack, I thought I was having a heart attack. My back was hurting all the time. All these things was happening that I didn't associate to anxiety. And in some circles, even people might feel ridiculed about how they feel too. Like you were saying, oh, you're just weak, But sometimes, at least for me, like I didn't know how to handle my anxiety when it was happening, and it ended up morphing into explosive rage disorder. And because I just put it away, not so much trying to repress it or suppress it, but just because things in life were happening so intensely at that time that I didn't have time to try to focus on anything that was going on, like tertiary events going on in my life. So, but they were still building up in the back of my mind in such an explosive way that eventually, it just happens. Like, for instance, like sleep's a good example. I didn't know I could fall asleep standing up until I woke myself up snoring in the chow hall in basic training because I was asleep standing up. And that shocked me because I didn't understand what was happening. I was like, who's snoring? And everybody looking at me. Luckily I didn't get smoked, but just when your brain says it's time to shut down, it's going to shut down whether you're ready or not. And I do agree that people nowadays, because I'm 44, but people nowadays are becoming more accustomed with just speaking openly about things, which is absolutely crucial, in my opinion. Some people complain about too much stuff at once, and that's a different story, a different situation. But yeah, I would say that the trauma bonding and stuff, it can happen anywhere. Even with my ex, my most recent ex, that's when I completely just broke down and gave myself a micro stroke on my left side from having an anxiety attack so bad. And I didn't realize that it was kind of, filtering off from her. And I was a victim of an abusive relationship. She sees this on YouTube. I'm gonna get some hate mail, but I mean, I love her to death, and we've made amends and stuff. But it doesn't necessarily have to be combating. It's post-traumatic stress. Things manifest in such a crazy way. The human mind is insane. How it works. I seen like a stage hypnotist. He told this guy he had a big pen. And he's like, I'm going to lay this on your arm, and it's going to burn you. He laid it on his arm, and the guy screamed, and there was a welt, like a blister that formed across his arm. It was a big pen. It weighed, it was room temperature. But the power of the mind is so crazy to me. I can't get my head around it. And things are manifested years after the fact, and you just put it away. You just put it away. You don't recognize the triggers, the warning signs, the things that are leading up to it. And I think that's another reason why being in the military, we're first responders or a band, because you guys are tight knit. It's the same kind of lines, or in a sober living home where you're with guys and you're sharing your feelings, like in group therapies and things like that. You need guys who are going to know you so deeply that they could just look at you and tell by the way you're holding yourself, or the way you're even breathing or shuffling or walking, or you're holding your eyes. They can spot them little things that you might not even be able to spot yourself. I have a roommate. He's like, hey man, you good, dog? I'm like, what's your man? What's going on? Because I can just see the way you look in your eyes. That was enough to give me pause, because I'm like, this guy knows me. What's going on with me? And internalize and try to figure it out, get my book out, talk to my therapist. I'm so grateful for the therapy. I wouldn't be here right now. I just wouldn't. And I fought really hard to not wake up for decades. I didn't want to wake up next day. I'd be so mad when I did. Tear the house to pieces because I was awake, and I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. There's no end in sight. I'm just plateaued, and use my French, my bullshit. I'm plateaued on bullshit. It's never going to get any better, regardless of what I do. It was dangerous ground, and if it hadn't been for God and my dad didn't have no idea what was going on in my life, because I didn't want to let him down. I didn't want him to worry. But I finally told him, and it's like the third time I heard my dad cry. I have a good friend of mine who's watching this right now. I will just call him Cookie. Went to high school with him. Man lost his leg in an accident. Lost his dad, his uncle. He told me one day, he's like, Burkey, he's like, you know what? My dad told me about not crying. It's not because he's weak, but showing somebody the wrong person your weakness, they could use it against you. And there's many times with him and I would go out to his building, it's like a woodshed, and sit out there. And he'd be like, okay, Burkey. He'd lock the door. He'd be like, tell me what's on your mind. And I would just fall to pieces, man, fall to pieces. And he's the inspiration that initially kicked off me getting well again. And I'm very grateful for him. So shout out to Cookie, saved my life multiple times.
I always just feel like anytime anytime Rick talks tonight, it's just about mental health. It's just like, mic drop. Like, we can all go home.
My bad.
Man, what you're saying is valid.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%. And I think those are things that we need to consider. Especially, I'm the youngest dude on this call right now. I'm pretty sure I'm younger than Oscar. I'm 33.
How old are you?
I'm 33.
And I feel like life has taken me down some, different paths and stuff like that. And, I've had family that have gone through, drug addiction and alcohol addiction and yeah. And, I've gone through, my fair share of addictions and, stuff over the years, and not wanting to be here anymore, depression and suicide. And it's always just kind of got to that point where it's like, it just feels kind of dumb that there isn't like safe spaces. And, Rob brought up shows earlier. Like, that's part of the things that like reason why Victims got going into shows. That's part of the reason that I will forever support Rival Booking, is because like I want safe spaces for people to come and feel welcome and love the music that is helping improve the mental health of others, and where we can create art. And then you have cross promotion things like podcasting and metal bands and mental health and talking about but I think a lot of that stuff also has to come from, the importance when you strip away all that at the end of the day, that men are left with their own mental health. And we've had a lot of generations that have fucked up and have told us that it's not okay to express yourself. If you cry, you're weak. I hate it hearing, people that die by suicide are weak. That's the coward's way out.
Yeah.
No, man, it takes a lot of courage to hold a gun to your face
Yeah.
and to pull the trigger.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand like the battles they're fighting. They don't understand the struggles they're dealing with, or it's. I think a lot of people also said like the happiest people are sometimes the ones that are suffering the most.
Yeah.
So, and it's true. That's just one way to mask it, just because they don't want to show or burden somebody else. But yeah, I hate that too when people say like, "Oh, that's the coward way to go out," or like like you don't understand what they're going through. It's a tough battle, and like sometimes people fight it by themselves, and that's when they end up losing, or they feel like they're by themselves, and yeah, that's what happens. Or they just don't have anybody who can relate to. They don't have anybody who can be themselves or reach out to, because they don't. Again, it's just so ingrained in us that like, oh, that's just weakness. That's what happens. And like Rob said, like our community and like playing bands, but I think just metal in general, hardcore, like it's so expressive, like so angry, but yet it's so soothing for others. Like, because they have all that built up, but we start playing, it just kind of releases it. All the tension is like, okay, yes. And I think I saw one band saying like angry music for happy people.
August burns red.
Or like, yeah, that's it. It's true. Or like angry music for like depressed people too, but it helps.
Yeah,
Right? Because it's just such a like huge feeling, that huge power. And once you're in there, you're with people like shoving each other in the mosh pit, and you're just like feeling that energy and just finding the release. It's just like I said, when I play drums, it's therapeutic to me. I love it. That's my therapy. That's my way out. Like sometimes I tell the guys, hey, I need band practice. Like I need it. I'm looking forward to band practice, and that's my therapy right there.
yeah.
I mean, going to the community aspect of it, of hardcore and metal, I feel like I know a couple people that say that the community has saved their lives, having that outlet, having a place to go. I feel like metal and hardcore in general has always been a world full of misfits, right? Like it doesn't matter what kind of background you have, what kind of baggage you have. There's always going to be a place for you in the community, right? And I know that there are a lot of people who have used that outlet that maybe if they didn't have that outlet would have wound up in a bad place in their life, I know plenty of people have come to me. I mean, I've been in bands for 20 years, man. I've heard it. I think that sort of thing is important too, is having that outlet, being able to have a place where you could be yourself and express yourself however you need to, right? Whether it be playing in a band or moshing or taking pictures or promoting shows or just hanging out in the back and drinking beers with some like-minded folk and listening to music. I feel like that's really important. I feel like the community is really important,
Yeah.
Oh crap! It's past my bedtime. Dang.
Wait a minute, hold on.
I
Well,
feel
Mark,
like he's taking it serious.
you're behind us, so I don't want to hear it.
Mark is the only one in Central Time.
Yeah, it's been a long few days. So, yeah, I'm actually in the process of, my uncle is Marine, was a Marine just after, I think it was the Korean War or Vietnam, one or the other. And he's dealing with a bunch of medical issues from some of the stuff he went through. And he was at Cap Lejeune, I think it was, that had a bunch of the medical stuff they're talking about now. He was there during the middle of all that. And he came to visit us a couple months ago. Well, it's been about 6 or 8 months ago and wasn't feeling good. I went over to the VA to find out he had a whole bunch of cancer. So the VA told him to go back home to Georgia, and they kind of just screwed him around for about a month, 6 weeks, did nothing. So, and finally told him to go back to your nephews. They can take care of you out there better than we can. So now he's been in the hospital dealing with medical issues that some of them may have come from his service, and things he dealt with in service. And he's been in the VA up here where we are. Me and my wife didn't even think twice. We told him, come on out here. You don't need to deal with this by yourself. We got the room. Bring it on. And he's actually been in the hospital since like June up here. And he's had 2 or 3 points where they didn't even know he was going to make it or not from some of the treatments and stuff that he went through. And the last one he went through, they had to remove a bunch of his bowel because it was dead. And the doctor told me on the phone, he's like, we're counting on his will to fight and get through this because we don't actually know that he's physically coming out of it. And ever since that one, he started kind of trending uphill, but he's having to deal with a lot of the medical problems that came from his service. And he's told the doctors there that if it hadn't been for me and my wife being here telling him, come on, pack your shit and come on, we got room for you. He's told just about all of them that he probably would have been found dead in his trailer out there in South Georgia in the middle of the swamp, because that's how he's lived for the last 20 years, 30 years by himself, serving as a deputy in the sheriff's department in South Georgia. So I've kept in contact with him, call him all the time, probably more than anybody else in the family. So it wasn't even a second thought to have him come out here to help him through it, whether he makes it or not. We're going to be here to help him through it.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
This is bringing it back to Dog Soldiers. This is the last thing I'll say. There is a.
We were talking about a movie.
Just bring it back in.
That's what we do here. That's what we do. There's a line in this movie. I don't remember who says it. So Rick, you'll probably know it. But it says, "Wolfpack typically stays together." Do you know who says that?
That is the woman who was explaining it to him.
Yes. All right. So Dr. Megan. But I think that line just kind of really summed up a lot of the things we've talked about is, community, man. Just the impact that it has on mental health, whether it's, podcasts like Billy and Mark and I, or, branches of the military like Rick, or bands and communities like Oscar and Rob, or, there's just a plethora of stuff to get plugged into. And I use fancy words, all right, Mark?
he always has to throw in a fancy word, and Mark always calls him out.
That's going to work for me, man.
Every time I hear the word plethora, I think of that scene from Three Amigos.
That's too big of a word for me, man.
I can't think of a synonym for it. Plethora. There's a plethora of communities to get involved in. There's whether you're here in Richmond, Rival Booking, Rob, what he's doing great stuff. Victims is starting to do shows. Whether that's film or music. There's Comic-Cons are a great community to get involved into. Billy's been doing a couple with us recently. He can attest to it, and just getting into plugging into something that you're passionate about and connecting with other passionate people. That's how community is built. That's how safe spaces are built. And that's what is going to be important for the longevity of you staying here with us till tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
LARPing helps.
Yeah.
I seen those pictures of you, Oscar, looking like a Viking down there, bro.
Yeah.
Bro, I was out there with a battle axe and a loincloth. This shit was ridiculous.
I had a Dane axe out there. Pretty cool.
Speaking of pictures, did anybody catch on at the beginning about that picture when they stared at it? About the twist?
Oh, the whole family? Yeah.
With the family standing there, did you catch the twist at that point or later?
Oh, I'm gonna have to watch it again. There's
It was later. It
But
was
you know
later.
what the twist was, right?
Yeah.
She's the one that took the
Yeah.
picture. So she
Yeah.
was there. But without
think
knowing
what-
that you don't know that twist, you don't know the ending.
I figured something was up when I first saw it, when they first get into the Land Cruiser or whatever, when she's flying, they first make contact with them and they don't know what they are yet. And she's like, oh, what's going on? We're running from huge fucking howling things. That's what. But when she looks back and sees Captain Ryan and that look on both of their faces, I was like,
Not even
something's
that.
going on. You know what I
She
mean?
just happened to show up. That's the
Yeah,
plot
yeah.
twist.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere, she happens to be there. Nah.
Yeah.
That right
Like
there was
nobody
a red flag.
in
to
any
me.
horror movie ever happens to show up. Like it just never happens like that.
I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
she was coming back with the truckload
We
of
know.
kibble.
Yeah.
He's like, here's the food, boys. Yeah.
from Costco.
How about when they're all eating, when they get in the house and they're, never waste an opportunity to eat, and they're scuffing down this chow? Did anybody piece together that they were actually eating other people? He's like, oh, what is this? Like, tastes like pork. Yeah, they're eating the people that were hanging up in the basement. That's what they were eating when they got there.
Yeah.
All right.
It took me a few times to see that, and I was like, oh crap, you know what I mean?
I mean,
I
there's
did not
a,
catch that. That's wild.
there's a reason they call it long pork.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You said it was
Yeah.
fresh and tasty, so
Yeah. Oh, he's like, oh, this is top grub. What is it? I don't know, mate. It tastes like pork. It's hanging up down the basement, and that's what's so intense about it. There's and I think that's why Terry threw up. Of course, Terry threw up because he's the vomiting cavalier. But yeah, and I love that. I love that whole scene too, where Joe gets that axe and he's just like had enough of Captain Ryan right from the get go. He's like, you want to have a go, and he goes upstairs and washes the puke off the back of his head, and that's I love special operations and that whole community and the extra. Like I had charted a path to maybe work at S1, which is Area 51. That's my idea that I wanted to do before I got, hurt my knee, couldn't do it no more. But that's the kind of psychotic stuff that goes on, I think, with special operations and like Delta Force. And then there's another unit that is even higher than Delta Force that I'm not even sure what it's called. But that's the kind of stuff that goes on, and that's what gets me the most, I think, about the movie altogether is they really, just like Hitler was into the esoteric things, like our government does that too, like DARPA and CIA and MI6, all these crazy experiments that they're doing, like Agent Orange. It's got dioxin, and dioxin is a primary component in genetically modified organics, and they're putting it in there, and it's destroying us. And it's been declassified that Lyme's disease is weaponized syphilis. That's declassified. That's their own words. And I'm like, this is like the Tuskegee Airmen. Was it the Tuskegee experiments that they were doing? And that's what they do to us. Like as a community, as Americans, as just lower class humans, look at what they're doing. And what's going on. I'm not being political or anything, but look at the news and what's going on in the news, the music industry, you name it. They're just that the evil is ridiculous. I would feel happy and relieved if I went outside and saw werewolves, as opposed to what some of these jokers are actually doing to us. You know what I mean? And it blows me away. I watch a lot of Sean Ryan podcasts, and some of these guys in there talking about things, I'm like, whoa, like Dr. Greer and all these other Marines. My God, I think his name is Mike Herrera. You should check those out. I'm not going to say anything about that and let you check that surprise out. And that's terrible. And I think that might actually chalk up to a lot, like Billy was saying about his dad. It's so unfortunate and so horrific. And they're just like, you know what, just move along. You're just a number. You're expendable. They don't care. And I think a lot of people go in and they feel so patriotic and like, man, this is awesome. I'm really doing something. And then the people you're taking orders from don't care. I get it. People, like Sergeant Wells says, some of the people you kill under your command are your own people. That's the burden of command. But it's above that. You look at Captain Ryan, and he goes, why us? Why we're both losing good men here? Why us? He goes, you were there. I saw an opportunity, and I remembered that you were a prick and didn't shoot the dog in the beginning of the movie. So I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Yeah,
it's not good. So yeah, we got to form communities and stick together. and just to bring awareness that we're all different men. I'll get a little hippy dippy here. We're all different manifestations of the same light. And the fact that scientists prove observing the experiment take place changes the outcome. That says so much. And if we can collectively come together and know that it's a safe place for us to put our hearts, our minds, our souls, our emotions, our spirituality out there in healthy ways for the betterment of mankind, that's the way it is. The wolf realized that he could get more sheep when he stopped disguising himself as a sheep and disguised himself as a shepherd. And we got to figure that out. We really do. And I like to be a motivational speaker. I talk at AA meetings once in a while. I haven't for a while. I've been busy working at this restaurant and trying to get work my way back into society and everything. And I'm very passionate about it. And I'm so grateful, Josh, that you let me on here. It's been fantastic. I mean, the movie is always going to be my favorite. I show everybody. I'll be over in the corner, just mouthing the movie. I know every single word of it. Because I watch it and I can feel the emotion, like watching Lord of the Rings when Gandalf falls in the mines of Moria. I was like, oh, it's so traumatic. And I still laugh every time Spoon spits the gum in his face and finds the Claymore. I still feel sad when they find Joe out in the Land River, gets his head ripped off. Awesome special effects, by the way, on that. I went way off on a tangent there. I apologize. I do apologize.
Well, gentlemen, I think this has been a great episode. This is probably the first time in what, Mark, 2 years since we've done a live episode. It's been a while. So. Yeah, it's been a while. So
I know Silence of the Lambs was one of the last live ones we did.
Yeah, that was 2022. So yeah, it's been 2 years.
Wow.
See, good things happen when worlds collide, man. So I tried and get interactive with our audience, but our conversations were just so hitting. So thank you guys to those that hung out with us. Zambies, who's been on our show many times, if she's still here, did interact with us. We did have I think some people for you, Rick, were here too.
Possibly. Oh yeah. Yeah, she used to be my boss. Yeah.
And Tabitha's
the guy I told you who has one leg. That's his wife. She and him, Nathan and Tabitha, were absolutely pivotal in encouraging me to be able to go into a recovery center and go to sober living and get away from my ex and help me. They really were the only ones besides my dad that I had. Then that's enough to give me hope. That sometimes that's all it takes is to know you're not alone. And I'll say this one more thing real quick. There was a time in Florida when I lived there that there was this big bridge and I was going to take the long dive off of it. And I stopped at a Subway to charge my phone just for whatever reason. And a woman came up to me, smiled at me. She said, "I really like your shirt." I said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you." We got to talking. The day before, I gave some homeless woman $20 worth of cheeseburgers. I'm like, I'm not going to eat them. And the lady who that day went to leave Subway, stopped her car, opened the door, got back out, walked over and said, "Hey, the Lord laid on my heart to give you this." And she handed me a $20 bill. If I had to stop there to charge my phone, anything could have happened. So as simple as a smile and a hello can literally save somebody's life. 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember who I am. But the smiles that I give to people is contagious. A smile can make it around the world, in a heartbeat. And that sounds so ridiculous, but it's not, though, if you think about it. So I've been very honored to be. You guys are talented musicians. It's got me rocking over here. I love the transition at the end.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, guys.
Well, before we jump into socials, just a remembrance for this. Everything that this day that we've talked about thus far, people like Oscar and Rick that have served our country. Once again, veterans are 72% at a higher risk for suicide than those that have not served. In 2022, there were 6,392 veterans that died by suicide, and over the last 20 years, we've seen a consecutive of 6,000 deaths by suicide when it comes to veterans. There are 131,000 plus veterans that have died by suicide since 2001. Suicide is currently the second leading cause of death for veterans in the United States for veterans under the age of 45. So if you or someone you know is currently struggling, please pick up the phone, dial 188, hit 1, because starting a conversation, as Rick said, it could be life-changing. Say something as simple as a smile, a hello, could be the difference between being here today and being here tomorrow. We also have resources on our website, victimsandvillains.net. You want to go to /hope, or just hit the landing page and hit the mental health resources. All of those are going to be in the show notes below. And speaking of show notes as well, you guys can also hit that pre-save for Bend the Knees EP that drops tomorrow. It's called Betrayed. Gentlemen, where can people find you online?
We are everywhere. Instagram, Facebook. Anywhere that we could shamelessly plug our music, you could find us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just a quick shout out again, we got a couple shows coming up here in Virginia. If you live in Virginia, we're hitting Fredericksburg, we're hitting Martinsburg, West Virginia, we're hitting Manassas on the 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And we got that sweet gig with Josh here December 14th down at Virginia Beach, which is going to be very rad. We're excited for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so December... Go ahead.
Sorry, just so everybody knows, because I know there's a lot of Bend the Knees on Instagram. It's @BendTheKnee_VA.
That. Also, in the show notes below, in the show notes below is their link tree as well, so you guys can just hit and get all of their stuff. But that show is going to be at Riff House Pub. It is a stacked lineup: Delinda, Yeet Cleaver, Disposed, Bend the Knee, Art. I don't know how to say that. Arteries like
is estuaries.
That one.
Arteries like estuaries. Shout out.
It's gonna be a
that's like the third show where that's like the third show in under a month we're doing with Disposed, which is gonna be kind of cool.
Yeah,
hitting a whole bunch of different spots with them, and even though we're not either from the areas that we're playing in, which is gonna be a good time, man. I like that band a lot.
Yeah. We also are doing 3 shows with them before the end of the year. So
nice. It's awesome. Busy dudes. Gotta respect it.
Yeah. So go ahead and check out and all those. That's going to be our last Virginia show for the year as well. But Rick, you got anything you want to plug, man? Anywhere people can find you online?
Yeah, I can put down in the comments. I've got a TikTok and I have my Facebook. I would rather hear somebody's problems and put their tears in my shirt than read anybody's obituary tomorrow. And that's a fact. If anybody has any issues, just need somebody to talk to, just need somebody to sit there and listen. As I've been in those shoes and I understand the gravity and the power of having just somebody to lend an ear with no judgment. A lot of people will listen to you so they can respond. You want to try to find the people who are listening to understand. And I think that's the most important thing. And you are loved. You are needed. You're important. You're special. I mean, look at this great big world, and somehow God decided to accumulate your molecules in just a certain way to make you. You're very unique, and you're here for a purpose. And never ever forget that. I know it's easier said than done when you're in the shit and you don't know what to do with yourself. But yeah, I'll put my contacts down there in the comments if that's okay. And yeah, because I have a YouTube channel too, but I don't put anything on there. I'm going to start doing that. I want to be a motivational speaker. So maybe one day I can have you guys on my show. Maybe.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. I can't tell from the avatar, but I don't know if your dad's here or not.
He might. Oh, yeah, there's Dad. Yeah, of course. Look, there he is. There's Burke. Plethora. Yeah, that's my pops.
Hi, Uncle Ricky. I feel like I had something to respond to that, and that comment threw me off. Mark, where can people find you online?
Usually avoiding the public or hanging out on Twitch or something with streamers. I've got an Instagram that I don't update very much, but it's usually with nerdy stuff and
Also
painting
true.
models. and that's titanium juggernaut painting.
Billy,
And that's
where
about
can we
it.
find you?
Well, I'll start off the letterbox. It's VA Boy 99 where you can find me, and then Josh is going to plug his.
Yeah, you guys can find me. I am at Captain Nostalgia on there. You guys can also follow my other podcast, That's High Praise, a Nicolas Cage podcast where we are talking about anniversary films this season for too much to keep. Yeah,
What?
too much there.
Can we just say, can we pause real quick? You're telling me that you have an entire podcast
I know,
dedicated to Nicolas Cage movies?
I was like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
All about Nicolas
He's
Cage.
serious.
I do.
That is kind of awesome.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Disappointed
facts.
that the Superman
It's-
movie didn't happen.
It's hard.
Shout out
facts.
Mandy. Shout out Mandy. That was the last good Nicolas Cage movie I've seen. That one and the one with Pedro Pascal, The Unbelievable
Oh.
Weight of Massive Talent, which
I
was
have
also hilarious.
I'm looking at the movie poster right now.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it was a funny movie. But Mandy was awesome. I feel like that was Nicolas Cage's tour de force coming back from Oblivion.
So good, man. So good.
So good.
But yeah, we'll be. You guys can, if you guys are new to us here on YouTube, we are Abyss Gazing. We are a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health. We have new episodes that drop every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Wherever you guys get your podcasts from. And if you guys would like more information about Victims and Villains, we are a mental health education that talks about mental health through pop culture, multimedia nonprofit. You guys can go to victimsandvillains.net, get access to all of our socials, all of our upcoming events, movie reviews, podcast network, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. So this has been cool. Thanks
Yeah.
guys for hanging out.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Stay with
Yeah,
us.
thank you.
Have a nice-
Absolutely.
Bruce.
Toodles.